The Houston Texans, a franchise always seen in mediocrity over the years despite having such good talent along the way. We've seen people like Andre Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, JJ Watt, Deshaun Watson move through this franchise, yet this franchise hasn't even seen an AFC championship in its entire existence. What is it? What is it about this franchise that can't get over the hump? Is it poor coaching? Is it poor management? Poor players? Well, guess what? There's a new system moving through Houston. A new head coach along with a rookie quarterback. Let's see what happens with this new change in Houston. Can they finally get over the hump of mediocrity? Maybe not this year, but in the future with this type of lineup. Also for fantasy football, is this lineup worth it for people to draft? Can you go into this lineup and say, I want a Houston Texan on my team? Let's find out today. Hello everyone, my name is Aaron and this is the Game Day Hour. Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Team Review. In this series, we take a look at each and every 32 NFL franchises and see what they offer for fantasy football. We analyze the team's quarterback, running back, wide receiver 1 and 2, tight end, and starting kicker. Our goal is to see what they did last season and ask, are they worth drafting? And if so, when and where? Today, we analyze the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud, Houston Texans quarterback. I believe, do not quote me, but I believe that this is the first rookie quarterback we're looking at in this series. That is CJ Stroud, the former Ohio State Buckeye. Now, Houston had the second pick, and we're definitely going for a quarterback, but we're a little skeptical for CJ Stroud at first since he failed the test with like a score of 18 on it. But I am not sure how much that actually matters. So we're going to take a look at his stats with Ohio State last season because they were stellar. They were pretty killer stats. With the Buckeyes last year, he completed 258 completions with 389 total attempts. That's 66.3% of his passes completed. Just close to the 2/3 way, just kind of short of it. 3,688 passing yards, 41 touchdowns in the air, and 6 interceptions. He was drafted second overall. Next up, Houston went defense. They went offense, defense 2 and 3, which was pretty amazing. So Houston had a pretty good draft. Stroud is a great quarterback. I got to watch him against my Irish. He didn't play very well in that game, but he still led the Buckeyes to a win and college football playoff appearance. And the thing is, like, you don't know how good he's going to be off the bat because, again, he's with the Texans. And they'll have really great receiving core. Not many good receivers around him. There's pretty decent, but not good enough for him, I believe. And because of that, it kind of leads down into the projections. Is he somebody I would draft? Not right now, and that's mostly because I have to see a season for him, and I just don't think he has enough. It's not going to be the same for a quarterback we'll see in a couple episodes from now, but I just believe I have to see more with what he got. And Houston needs to draft more. Get him a big-time wide receiver in this next upcoming draft. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some big names coming off the board next year. But if you do draft him, again, he's a quarterback too. And lastly, I don't have him ranked on my list. So I got to see a full season with him. Hey, maybe he starts popping off in the middle of the year. You want to go pick him up in free agency? Go pick him up. But he's not somebody I would prioritize drafting, if that makes sense. So kind of just, I wouldn't say steer clear, analyze, but don't become so hell-bent on getting them. Dameon Pierce, Houston Texans running back. Coming off a really good rookie season is the running back for Houston, Dameon Pierce. Now, last year, I actually got Dameon Pierce in a trade that I thought was a win-win for me. I didn't have a really good fantasy year last year, and I'll admit it was pretty bad. I made a lot of stupid trades, but I got Dameon Pierce in a trade, and he was pretty good. He averaged around 11 to 12 points per game in my fantasy, so he did the work. He did the work that he needed to do, and his stats last year, although they aren't big running back stats, for a rookie, they are very impressive. He played 13 games last year for Houston. In those 13 games, he had 220 carries, which was tied for 13th. He had 939 rushing yards, that's 17th among all running backs in the league. 4 touchdowns, that's tied for 36th. And he had 155 total fantasy points, that was 27th among all running backs. Now, I'm trying to figure out what would have happened had he played all those 13 games or all those 17 games. He would definitely be over 1,000 rushing yards. I don't think there's any question about that. Essentially, the offense ran through Damian, and it was pretty simple. He's a big back, a bell cow potentially for Houston. They need someone like that. They've had good running backs over the years. They had Arian Foster, and for a little bit they had David Johnson. So is he the next big running back coming through Houston? I believe he is. For projections, he is somebody I would 100% draft. Now, I see him more or less as a running back 2 than anything. And that's mostly because, like, I still got to see another season, but he's definitely on my rushing list, like, without a doubt. He's ranked number 18th on my list overall. So he's a running back 2, and I would see him as a good flex position. But most importantly, I would say that don't skip out on this guy. He's going to be a big prospect. I'd see him somewhere in the rounds, like, 4 through 7, mostly. And if you guys have to choose any Texan or want to choose any Texan, he's probably the best one out there. He's probably the best player on the team overall. So yeah, have fun with Dameon Pierce. Nico Collins, Houston Texans wide receiver 1. Now, the receiving core is not that great in my opinion. I think they have a very lackluster receiving core for the most part. And recently they made a switch that put Nico Collins as the wide receiver 1 and Robert Woods as the wide receiver 2. Because of this, we're going to be taking a look at Nico first. Now, his stats last year were pretty underwhelming. He had 10 games played. In those 10 games, he had 37 receptions. That's tied for 115th among all receiving stats. 481 receiving yards. That's 91st. 2 touchdowns. That's tied for 111th. And he had a total of 92 total fantasy points, which was 76th. Now, you're going to see that the other receiver, Woods, probably has better stats. And in fact, he does have better stats, but it makes no sense to me why Nico is number 1. But I guess it's because he is their pure draft pick, so it could be for chemistry reasons, which if that's the case, then I actually would agree with this. But because of his stats, I don't have him on my top 50 wide receivers list. So he's not somebody I would draft, and I don't even know if I think anyone's going to draft him. He probably would be high up on free agency, though. So if you need a receiver, then he's probably good for free agency purposes. But for the most part, I wouldn't really bother with the Houston Texans receiving core overall. But hopefully they can step up, because if they can step up, that means CJ Stroud's also stepping up. Robert Woods, Houston Texans wide receiver 2. Now, the second counterpart coming from the Tennessee Titans is Robert Woods. Robert Woods has been over the league a few teams now, and last year for Tennessee, he had to be one of the bigger name receivers because Tennessee had a terrible core as well, and they still, in my opinion, don't have a great wide receiver core. As a matter of fact, in this division, the best receiving core is Jacksonville, who we'll take a look at later. But as for Robert Woods, he played 17 games for the Titans last year, and in those 17 games played, he had 53 receptions, which was tied for 69th. He had 527 receiving yards, that's 77th, along with 2 touchdowns, that's tied for 111th. He had 109 total fantasy points, that was tied for 58th. So I mostly blame it on the fact that Tennessee has not really established that quarterback position just yet. You got 3 quarterbacks on that roster who could potentially be the starters there. I mean, now after this previous draft last year was 2. And for Woods, he's not been on a pretty good team since the Rams. So, but the thing is, he has veterancy, and because of that, he is somebody that I would consider drafting. But he's somebody I actually would not really draft because he's out of the top 40, which is where my draft list kind of is. He's 42nd on the list. So if anything, if I were to have drafted Robert Woods, it would most likely be in a position that is probably in the last few rounds, 14, 15, 16. Other than that, he's a high free agency pick. And I think he's going to get a lot more than Nico Collins, because if Nico Collins is put in the number 1 position, that means he has to face against the best of the best cornerbacks. And in that division, there's pretty good cornerbacks there. But the thing is, Woods will be number 2. He'll probably get more production, and he'll probably be the veteran for CJ Stroud. So in that case, he's probably the guy you would draft if you were to draft one of the 2 receivers. Dalton Schultz, Houston Texans tight end. This will probably be the biggest weapon for CJ Stroud this year, the former Dallas Cowboy, Dalton Schultz. Now, Schultz has not been a spectacularly big name, but he's put up great production for Prescott, for Cooper Rush, and now potentially for CJ Stroud. He is 100% the number 1 tight end on that team. And we'll take a look at his stats last year. Now keep in mind, he didn't play in every game. He had 15 games played with Dallas last season. He had 57 receptions, that's tied for 60th. 570. He had 577 receiving yards, which was 65th, and 5 touchdowns, that's tied for 34th. Now, among receivers, that's not great stats, but among tight ends, he had 138 total fantasy points. That's 10th in all of fantasy. So the thing is, he's a great reliable. He's going to always be ready for the medium, the short route passing games, something that CJ Stroud is probably going to use a lot in early development. So he's probably the best receiver for that. And because of that, he is somebody I would draft. Now, he's a tight end 1 or 2, and I would see him being drafted in rounds, let's say 6 through 12, somewhere in that middle bunch. He's number 11 on my list, and that's also because he would be higher if it wasn't for the fact that they have a rookie quarterback, but I also can't put him too low. So if you need somebody who is going to really be the security blanket for anyone, CJ Stroud needs a security blanket more than any other player, besides potentially Anthony Richardson if he is the start for Indianapolis, which right now it doesn't look like he is. So Dalton Schultz is going to be a good pick in that regards. Jaime Fairbairn, Houston Texans kicker. Lastly, we have a pretty consistent kicker in Jaime Fairbairn. Yes, it took me a while to try to figure out how to pronounce his name, but that's the best I can do with it. So Fairbairn is probably one of the more accurate kickers I've seen so far on this list of kickers that I've been covering so far. And so I'm going to tell you his stats. 29 from 31 made and attempted field goals. That's 93.5%. That's 7th. And this is, by the way, in 17 games, so he's played a long while. He's 100% from extra point percentage. We like that. We like that. That's tied for first. His long was 56. That's tied for 16th. And he had 111 points. That is 123 total fantasy points. That's tied for 17th among all kickers. So consistency, and he also got to make a good amount of field goals last year. So you're going to get a lot of points from him if you're able to find an offense that is just worth it for him. So hope that offense turns out to be what the Houston Texans need. As far as kickers goes, he's ranked 16th on my list. Therefore, he is somebody I would draft as a kicker too. There's just a bunch of better and more flashier kickers on better teams. And because of that, he doesn't get to be very high on this list. But by himself, he's a really good kicker. So you can take your time in the last few rounds, rounds 15 and 16, and he should be there. And if he is there, go pick him up. Hopefully Houston can start, pushing in the field goal range more. Maybe he can be able to make 34, even 35 field goals. That's significantly better. And that'll do it for today's episode. By the way, do you like the quality? Do you like the quality? I love this microphone. It manages to destroy every other audio that is not my voice, and it makes my voice very clear. I'm not hearing any staticky or echo-ness, and I love it. So this is a birthday gift I got, along with a new hard drive and a new pair of headphones that I can do for recording. I'm gonna need to get like a little outlet on the side of my computer that can hold multiple things at once, besides this microphone or this camera. So be tuned for that, I guess. But thank you for watching today's episode, and if you do, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. Go follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. They're all in the description, and you can find them in the outro of today's video. Also, one more thing. I have planned college football videos starting in August, which will appear hopefully once every week. So be prepared for that. If you want to ask questions about that, go to my Twitter or my Instagram, and I'll be sure to, answer some questions about it. But I'm not going to try to give away too much. So hope you guys have a great day. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one. Be prepared for the next video. The next video is the Indianapolis Colts. And I'll see you then. So, peace.